What happens when the person who gave you life becomes the one you blame for everything you've lost? When betrayal feels so deep that forgiveness seems impossible, until the truth you never knew shatters everything you believed. In a village where secrets are buried deeper than the red earth beneath bare feet, a young man carried a wound that never healed. His mother left him. Or so he thought. And for 20 years, that belief shaped every word he spoke, every promise he made, every wall he built around his heart. But some truths don't stay buried forever. This isn't just a story about a son who couldn't forgive. It's a story about the lies we tell ourselves, and the truths that set us free. Before his name became synonymous with bitterness, there was Michael. A boy. A son. A man who swore an oath he never thought he'd break. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every story carries a heartbeat, and every truth demands to be heard. Now, before we begin, where in the world are you watching from? Is it dawn in Accra, afternoon in Johannesburg, or evening in Port Harcourt? Drop your location in the comments below, hit like, and subscribe, because some stories don't just entertain. They transform. Now, lean in. Because what you think you know about this story? You're wrong. The rain came down in sheets the day Michael's grandmother told him the lie that would shape his life. He was 7 years old, sitting on the cracked concrete floor of their two-room house in Enugu, watching water stream through the rusty zinc roof into a dented bucket. The sound, drip, 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 became the rhythm of his childhood. A constant reminder that everything leaks eventually. Everything breaks. Your mother didn't want you, Mama Ngozi said, her voice flat as stale bread. She didn't look at him when she said it. Just kept stirring the pot of watery soup on the coal stove, her back bent like a question mark. She left you here like a bag of cassava and went to chase money in Lagos. That's the kind of woman she was. Selfish. Always selfish. Michael's small hands tightened around his knees. He didn't cry. Even at 7, he'd learned that tears changed nothing. His grandmother's words dropped into his chest like stones into a well, sinking deep, settling at the bottom where they stay for years. Outside, children laughed and splashed in the rain. Inside, something in Michael went silent. He didn't ask questions. Children in the village learn early not to question their elders. But at night, lying on the thin mat he shared with his cousin, Michael made a promise to the darkness. If his mother ever came back, he would turn his face away. If she ever called his name, he would pretend not to hear. If she ever reached for him, he would pull back. She had abandoned him. And some things, he decided, could never be forgiven. The years passed like seasons, dry, rainy, dry again. Michael grew tall and strong, his body filling out with muscle from working on his uncle's farm. But inside, he stayed that 7-year-old boy sitting by the bucket, listening to the drip, drip, drip of water and betrayal. He worked hard. Studied by candlelight. Won a scholarship to secondary school. And every achievement felt like proof that he didn't need her. That he'd survived her absence. That her living had made him stronger, not weaker. When Michael turned 18, he left the village for university in Port Harcourt. His grandmother was dead by then, buried under the same red earth where she'd planted her lies. At her funeral, people whispered that he didn't cry enough. That he seemed cold. Ungrateful. But Michael knew something they didn't. He'd already cried all his tears years ago. Now, he had none left. And somewhere in Lagos, his mother, if she was even alive, had no idea that her son had grown into a man who'd built his entire identity around hating her. Michael was 27 when the letter arrived. By then, he'd become everything his younger self had dreamed of, a civil engineer with a good job in Port Harcourt, a small flat in a decent neighborhood, a car that actually started in the mornings. He'd built a life, brick by brick, with no help from anyone. Especially not from her. The envelope was cream-colored, slightly worn at the edges, his name written in shaky handwriting. There was no return address. Just Michael Okonkwo in letters that trembled like leaves in wind. He almost threw it away. Almost. But something, curiosity, maybe, or the ghost of the boy he'd been, made him tear it open. Inside was a single page, and the words were like an earthquake under his feet. My son, it began. My name is Grace Okonkwo. I am your mother. And I am dying. Michael's hand shook. He sat down hard on his sofa, the letter clutched so tightly the paper crumpled. She was alive. All these years, alive. The letter continued in that same unsteady script. She was in Lagos. She had cancer. Stage 4. The doctors gave her 3 months. Maybe less. And she was asking, no, begging, to see him. Just once. Before she died. I know you hate me, she wrote. I know you think I abandoned you. And I cannot blame you for believing that. But Michael, my son, there are things you don't know. Things I couldn't tell you then. Things your grandmother made me swear never to reveal. But I'm dying now, and the dead don't keep promises to the living. If you can find it in your heart, come to Lagos. Let me tell you the truth before I go. Let me give you that much. The address was at the bottom. A hospital in Yoba. Michael crumpled the letter into a ball and threw it across the room. Then he got up, retrieved it, smoothed it out, and read it again. And again. His hands were shaking. His heart was racing. 20 years of carefully constructed anger trembled like a house of cards in a strong wind. She wanted to explain. She wanted his forgiveness. After 2 decades of silence. After letting him grow up believing he was unwanted. Unloved. The audacity of it burned in his throat like pepper soup. But that night, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, he let himself remember. Not the story his grandmother told. But the fragments that came before. A woman's voice singing him to sleep. Gentle hands braiding his hair. The smell of coconut oil and laughter. Memories so faint they felt like dreams. Were they real? Or had his mind invented them to fill the empty space where a mother should have been? And why did some broken part of him want to know the truth? By morning, Michael had made his decision. He would go to Lagos. Not to forgive her. Never to forgive her. But to look her in the eye and tell her exactly what her abandonment had cost him. To make her carry that weight into whatever came after death. He owed himself that much. He owed the 7-year-old boy by the bucket that much. And so, 3 days later, Michael boarded a bus to Lagos, his heart a stone, his jaw set, his mind made up. This wouldn't be a reunion. It would be a reckoning. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and dying hope. Michael walked through sterile white corridors, his footsteps echoing, his chest tight. Ward B, room 7. The nurse pointed him there with sympathetic eyes, as if she knew what kind of visit this was. As if she'd seen it before. Men arriving with hardened faces to see mothers they'd written off long ago. Deathbeds had a way of forcing reunions nobody wanted. He pushed open the door. And froze. The woman in the bed was a skeleton draped in brown skin. Her head was wrapped in a faded scarf. Her cheekbones jutted out like cliff edges. But her eyes were the same. Deep brown, liquid with something Michael couldn't name. Recognition. Sorrow. Love. She tried to sit up when she saw him. Failed. Michael, she whispered. Her voice was paper thin. You came. He didn't move from the doorway. I came to hear your excuse, he said. His voice was ice. Then I'm leaving. Grace nodded slowly, as if she'd expected nothing more. Sit, she said. Please. He sat. but on the chair farthest from the bed. Arms crossed. Face hard. She took a long, rattling breath. Your grandmother told you I abandoned you, she began. That I left you to chase money in Lagos. That I was selfish. Michael's jaw clenched. She wasn't lying. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She was, she said. Every word of it was a lie. The story came out in pieces, between coughs and pauses for breath. Michael's father, Grace's husband, had died when Michael was 6. A motorcycle accident on a rainy night. Grace was young, barely 23, with no education and a child to feed. She'd worked 3 jobs, washing clothes, selling akara, cleaning houses, but it was never enough. Mama Ngozi, her mother-in-law, watched her struggle with cold eyes. You're a burden, she told Grace. You and that boy. You're bleeding us dry. Then one day, Mama Ngozi made an offer. Go to Lagos, she said. My brother owns a provision store. Work for him. Send money back. I'll take care of Michael. Grace refused. She couldn't leave her son. Wouldn't. But Mama Ngozi was relentless. You're a terrible mother, she said. Look at him. Thin as a stick. Wearing rags. Is this the life you want for him? Go to Lagos. Make money. Come back when you're stable. It's the only way. And finally, broken by poverty and guilt, Grace agreed. She would go for 6 months. Just 6 months. Save money. Return. Give Michael a better life. I kissed you goodbye the morning I left, Grace said, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. You were still sleeping. I whispered, Mama will be back soon. I believed it, Michael. I swear to God, I believed it. She worked in Lagos for 3 months. Sent money every week. Called the village phone to ask about Michael. Then the calls stopped going through. The money she sent was never acknowledged. She wrote letters. They went unanswered. Frantic, she saved enough for a bus ticket and went back to the village. Mama Ngozi met her at the door with fire in her eyes. You're not welcome here, she said. Michael doesn't want to see you. He's happy now. You left him. You broke his heart. The best thing you can do is stay away. Grace begged. Wept. Tried to push past. But Mama Ngozi was a wall. If you love him, she said, you'll leave him alone. You'll let him forget you. You'll let him heal. And behind her grandmother, Grace saw Michael, 7 years old, watching from the window with big, confused eyes. Mama Ngozi turned and said something to him. Michael's face changed. He looked at Grace with something that shattered her soul. Not love. Not longing. Hate. She told you I didn't want you, Grace sobbed. She poisoned you against me. And I believed her. I thought if I stayed away, you'd be better off. I thought she was right. That I was the problem. So I went back to Lagos. And I stayed away. And every single day for 20 years, I hated myself for it. I thought I was protecting you from a mother who wasn't good enough. I didn't know she was telling you I abandoned you. I didn't know, Michael. I swear on your father's grave, I didn't know. Michael couldn't breathe. The room spun. 20 years of anger, of bitterness, of carefully nurtured hate, all of it built on a lie. His grandmother had taken his mother from him. Had turned him into a weapon against the woman who loved him. Had let him grow up believing he was unwanted when the truth was, his mother had been driven away. Why didn't you come back? He whispered. Why didn't you fight harder? Grace's smile was broken. Because I was young. And broken. And I believed her when she said you were better off without me. By the time I found the courage to try again, you were in university. I didn't want to disrupt your life. I thought you'd moved on. That you didn't need a ghost from the past haunting you. Michael stood. Walked to the window. Pressed his forehead against the glass. Outside, Lagos hummed with life, cars honking, people shouting, the world spinning on. Inside, everything he believed about himself was collapsing. He wasn't the boy nobody wanted. He was the boy someone fought for. Someone loved. Someone mourned. The walls he'd built, brick by bitter brick, crumbled into dust. And beneath them, he found something he thought was dead. A 7-year-old boy who just wanted his mother. He turned. Crossed the room. And sat on the edge of her bed. Gracie's eyes widened. Michael took her hand, so small, so fragile, like a bird's wing. I forgive you, he whispered. And then, for the first time in 20 years, he cried. Not the silent, swallowed tears of a child by a bucket. But the deep, wrenching sobs of a man who'd finally understood. His mother cried too. And for 3 weeks, until she took her last breath, Michael stayed by her side. They talked. They laughed. They filled in 20 years of empty space with words and silence and love. When she died, Michael held her hand. And he whispered, "Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for loving me. I'm sorry I didn't know." Michael buried his mother in Lagos, under a tree that bloomed with red flowers. He visits her grave every month. And every time, he tells her about his life. About the family he's building. About the forgiveness he's learning to give himself. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal. But healing begins the moment we are brave enough to ask, what if the story I've been telling myself isn't true? And a heart that chooses truth over bitterness, understanding over anger, and love over the lies we inherit, will always find its way home. If this story moved you, hit like, share it, and tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered that something you believed your whole life was wrong? How did it change you? Subscribe to Stories by the King, where every truth heals, and every ending brings a lesson worth remembering. This is Stories by the King, where love wins, and purpose finds its home.